First, let's welcome Edd and Cynthia Staton, the experts when it comes to expat living. The Statons are the authors of a trilogy of books called Mission, Rescue Your Retirement. Each book was an instant Amazon bestseller. Their new mission is to make retiring abroad part of the national conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today here on The Income Generation.
Thank you for inviting us, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
So, what motivated you to write this trilogy of books, The Mission?
Well, I'll take that one. Ed's blog about our expat adventures really caught on and was read by thousands of people in over 30 countries. So we decided to take 8 years worth of material and share our story with a wider audience by adapting that material into 3 books.
I can imagine the research for this had to be a lot of fun, because in order to do this, you had to travel pretty much everywhere that you talked about, right?
Well, that's it. Pretty much the blog was about our life, and it was full of adventures and misadventures.
Oh, yes.
That's awesome. That's great. So I know you talk a lot about some of the things that if someone's low on a budget, that they can still reach their goal of retiring abroad, even if they're pinching pennies. What are your top 3 pieces of advice for those folks?
Well, the people that recognize that situation, we would say congratulations, because too many people these days seem to be either in denial or a state of complete unawareness about their financial future. The first thing we would say is to, as best you can, calculate what your future retirement budget and income is going to be. If the math doesn't add up, which very likely it's not, then consider the possibility of reducing your expenses, but not by cutting your current lifestyle to the bone. Who wants to do that? Instead, we suggest think about moving abroad like we did, where 2 magical things can happen at the same time. Number 1, you can substantially reduce your cost of living, and number 2, you can up-level your lifestyle instead of downsizing it. Like, what a concept, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, but how do you know? I mean, you go somewhere for a week on vacation, you get a week off, and you go and you fall in love with that on vacation. You say, I think I might want to retire here. How long is really enough, in your opinion? How long do you have to stay in a certain place to really have a feel for it? I've got to imagine 1 week vacation isn't really enough in most cases.
Well, actually, I'll take that one.
Yeah.
You're right, and that's a big mistake that we point out in our program that we developed. Is too often people may fantasize about living abroad, but they do that based on where they like to vacation, and that is so different than living somewhere 24/7, 365. So when you go and visit a country to look at living there, we suggest a minimum of 2 weeks, and you're not going to be a tourist during those 2 weeks. You're actually going to do a lot of research so that you go away from the experience with the amount of information you need to make a good decision about whether or not you could actually live there.
So
I was going to say, the funny thing about vacationing, Dave, is that people forget that they go on vacation to get away from their life, and not that this could be their future life all the time, like Cynthia said, and that's just a big disconnect.
No, it's true. It's that's why I said that. To me, I'm surprised even 2 weeks is enough. In some places, for some people, I would think maybe even more to really get into a groove. But unfortunately, before most people retire, they can't afford to take more than 2 weeks. It just doesn't work. So
well, that's we did 10 days, and we're here almost 9 years later. So it can work in 2 weeks.
That's a great success story.
You have to know what you're looking for.
Cynthia, we need to leave it there for now. We need to take a commercial break. We'll be right back. When we come back, though, I'm going to ask you about what kinds of things people can expect when they retire in a foreign country. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more here on The Income Generation. Right now, it's time to welcome back authors Edd and Cynthia Staton. Thanks for sticking around.
Sure.
So what are some of the things that people can expect, the pleasant things that are really going to help them create a fulfilling retirement once they choose their destination and they actually make the move?
That's a great question. You know, the weird thing is, Dave, you know this, Social Security is designed to cover 40% of your pre-retirement income. Meanwhile, 66% of Americans are indicating that they're going to be depending on Social Security for their primary source of income. The great news is that retiring abroad, you can enjoy a phenomenal lifestyle as we're doing on a Social Security budget. Cynthia, why don't you tell Dave and the viewers a little bit of what our life looks like?
Okay. Yeah, we have a budget. We've shared this with many people and throughout our program of less than $2,000 a month. And we live in a penthouse apartment, 4 bedrooms, 4.5 baths. It's a modern apartment. Our rent is $700 a month. And this is in a very nice section of the city that we live in, Cuenca. We also have 100% health care coverage. We belong to the national health care system. Our 100% coverage, zero deductible for $81 a month. That's for both of us. So the health care here is fabulous. We eat out whenever we like. The food is very inexpensive. And we also have gym memberships, yoga memberships, spa treatments. It's really not a ramen noodles kind of lifestyle.
Don't forget the housekeeper.
Oh yeah, and a weekly housekeeper. That's a huge bonus.
Gee whiz. So even a couple of starving authors like yourselves could live the life of luxury. I love that. What are some of the gotchas? Give me a couple of the major gotchas, and we've talked about some before in the show, but what are some of the major gotchas that maybe I might not even thought of, and certainly our viewers might not have thought of before they make this move?
Ed, do you want to take that one?
One thing from a financial point of view is people don't think about having a reserve fund for the very things you're talking about, because no matter how well you fantasize the way it's going to be, there's going to be
that you plan.
Yeah, there's just going to be things that come up expense-wise that if you didn't set aside a budget beforehand to cover that, you're going to be scrambling from the get-go, and who wants that to be the start of your expat adventure, right?
So make sure you know your expenses, make sure you set up a reserve just in case. Tell me just in 30 seconds or so, one crazy gotcha that you've heard from somebody else, that something that came out of left field that might have blindsided somebody they didn't even think about.
Oh, that's a tough one, but I have to say that moving someplace without really doing the proper research, especially if you have a particular medical condition and you fall in love with that place, that's a great vacation place, but you fail to take into consideration and do the internal work that's necessary to find out, what you really want and what you really need. Yeah. And then you have to end up leaving and going somewhere else. And that's, you're doing the process all over again. And that can be a huge mistake.
You have double the cost. Wow. Yeah, it's true. That's true. Edd and Cynthia, don't go away. We'll be right back after the break. And you stay with us too. You're here watching The Income Generation. I'm David Scranton. Okay, so now that we're done talking about foreign cities that I'm ill-equipped to pronounce properly, it's time to welcome back authors Edd and Cynthia Staton, the experts on retiring abroad. So coming up next month, I know that you guys are set for a huge release, a comprehensive online master course called Retirement Reimagined. And from what I understand, the goal of it is to teach baby boomers who may not have saved quite enough how to successfully retire overseas and to become successful expatriates. Tell us about that program.
Well, based on our knowledge of the situation in the States, we just realized that we could be of help to people. The financial writers talk about the solution to the problem being to work longer, to cut back your lifestyle, save, and then prepare for a few meager years of retirement after all that, which isn't the greatest plan, while we're sitting here enjoying the lifestyle that we described. So for those people that are willing to consider another option, which could be their best option, we've taken a stem to stern approach from people that don't even have a passport all the way through the process to getting off the plane in your new country and even helping you get set up after you get there.
And it is a process.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And we talked about the planning a lot. So I'd imagine one of the impediments is something that your new program is going to overcome is that people just don't know what to do or how to look into it. They don't think it's possible. So I think you'll help them, get them to realize it's easier than they think. But the other problem, I've got to imagine the biggest issue is for those who have families where they've got the grandbabies back home and maybe they feel like they can't afford to fly back enough to spend time with them, or they can't spend enough money to come out to see you. In those cases where that's an impediment, how do you help people with that?
Dave, that is a real concern, and we addressed that in the program. When we moved to Cuenca almost 9 years ago, we didn't have any grandchildren at the time, but we anticipated having them, and so we knew that would be something we would deal with, and we arranged our finances, and fortunately we were able to do this so that we could make multiple trips back home to visit those grandbabies and be with family in those early years. And I think that's another part of the planning when people are considering doing this, to make sure that their budget not only covers their monthly expenses, but they have a travel fund for those family times, and also, you know, family can visit you and new country abroad. Ed, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, a lot of the thinking about all of this is kind of stuck in the 20th century. Flights are so much more abundant now, and they're not that expensive. And we're talking to you on Skype right now, and the communication is not a problem. We used to live in Las Vegas and flew back to the eastern U.S. to visit our family. That took hours. Flying from here to the U.S. just takes a couple of more hours. It's more a psychological thing than it is a reality thing.
So I guess if you're willing to be flexible and you're willing to wait until you get deals on flights and plan a little bit in advance, which if you're retired, one could certainly do, it becomes a lot easier. And although it may not be part of your $2,000 a month budget, if you get your basic budget down to $2,000, including a housekeeper, by the way, I'm jealous, I love that, then you certainly have a little bit left over for seeing the grandchildren. So, Edd and Cynthia, it's been my pleasure having you here on The Income Generation. Thank you very much. Stay with us. We'll be right back here on The Income Generation.